My Little Dashie by Rob Cakeran 53. I live my life one day at a time. A good portion of these days are uneventful, always falling in the same routine. I wake up, walk to work, walk home, and then bum around until I go to bed. Sometimes I'll hang around with a few friends of mine, while other times I'll just play video games or watch My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Every so often something new and interesting happens. I meet an old friend, I find $1 on the ground, or I get chased by a stray dog. Living in a dying city isn't very fun or interesting. This city was once full of life and color, but now most of the houses are sagging. The businesses sit empty and abandoned, and several open fields lay barren of the once great factories that helped drive the economy. I had never seen the city during those times in person, but I have seen pictures. My mother and father lived a happy life, and they could only wish the same for me growing up. Sadly, I cannot say I've achieved that wish of theirs. I've fallen into the same dull routine: wake, work, sleep, repeat. I do have some moments of bliss, but the daily struggles I go through outweigh the small moments of joy I have. My Little Pony has certainly helped, but it's still just another thing to help get my hopes up. Every time I see the show or one of the ponies on a fan site, I recoil a bit at the bright colors, the joyful faces of the ponies, and the peaceful scenery of the world. It's so hard to look at that beautiful world, having it so close to my grasp. I reach out to touch its warm colors and bright smiling faces of the ponies, only to be stopped by my computer screen. I snap back to reality. It gets to the point where I will simply shut down my computer and walk away. I do that a lot, especially after my parents died. I go for a walk. When I feel sad, I walk. When I feel tired, I walk. When I feel like walking, I walk. Walking has become my second life in a sense. I spend at least half my day outside along the crumbling sidewalks and decaying suburbs. I've seen people come and go. I've seen buildings torn down, burnt up, or have seen so much graffiti on its walls that its original color is unrecognizable. I very rarely pass any other people on my strolls. Most people don't like to look at their once beautiful city, their homes or former businesses. I don't blame them. In fact, I envy them. They saw this place with our own two eyes, seeing the buildings still standing tall and proud, the lawns freshly cut, the paved roads, the sidewalks still intact. The only thing I've ever seen that even comes close is my mother's paintings, each of them colorful scenes of this concrete world. She started painting once everything crumbled beneath her feet, making the sad scenery before her look beautiful. Her masterpiece is an open field that yielded a parking garage. Over it she drew an amazing rainbow, my favorite picture. I guess this is part of why I like Rainbow Dash out of all the other ponies. Her colors, the amazing sonic rainbow, all of them remind me of that picture. There have been times I wished I had my own Rainbow Dash, or more realistically, a plushie of her to curl up in bed with. I've made an old Simba toy into a temporary replacement until I'm able to save enough money for one. It helps in a way. I like holding it close. Will heal my wounds, my pain, and my sorrow. My feet, after countless of hours walking in my old shoes, pulsate under the sheet, and all the while I hold that stuffed animal harder than a mother protecting her child. It's the only thing I can look at and feel pure joy, even though it's physically different from the Rainbow Dash I want. It will have to do. Today, as usual, I walked to work. It was the same shit, just a different day. Watching the same people enter the store, grab their merchandise and pay, and walk out with bags in tow. My shift ends after several hours of this. I clocked out and started walking home. I decided to use a different route this time for a change in pace. A little something different from the normal path I walk. This part of town was hit the worst. Only a few houses still stand, and none of them is occupied. It's truly a sad sight to see. And again, this is really the only sight I see. The only sight I'll ever see. Or so I thought. I was stopped by something unusual. A stray cardboard box in the middle of the sidewalk. Now, living in this kind of area, I see trash all the time. Boxes, McDonald's cups, a plastic bag litter in the streets and empty fields. but rarely will I see a cardboard box that isn't crushed in one way or another. I've noticed this particular box because it happened beyond my way. During my younger years, I tried to do what I could for the community. I picked up trash whenever I saw it, or I'd attempt to help my neighbors. It was a losing battle. Nowadays, I'd just given up any hope of cleaning the city, much less my own neighborhood. Now, I'll just pass the trash by, letting it blow away in the breeze, or just sit there and decompose. I let what's left of the people do their own things, since most of them don't care about anyone other than themselves. So why should I be any different? I walked past the box, barely giving it a glance. Nothing about it caught my attention right away. I continued on, my home not far away now. Upon arriving, I sat down, played some games, and attempted to push the box out of my mind. I had little luck, as somehow the box had managed to push its way back in. Time crept on by, and I soon found myself wanting to go for another walk. I left the house and started down my usual route when I stopped. What was it about the box that made it stick in my mind? I turned around, starting down the path I had taken home, the path that I only walk in a blue moon. Curiosity got the best of me, and I wanted some closure. Within minutes, I found it, still sitting there, sad and alone among the broken concrete and overgrown grass. It didn't move. It didn't stand out as if it were special. It was an ordinary, brown cardboard box. I didn't want to say I came out here for nothing, so I walked closer to it. As I drew closer, however, I began to notice something inside. It was brightly colored. Multiple colors, in fact, and it was quite small. Maybe the size of a few months old Labrador puppy. I stopped beside the box and looked down at the colorful blob inside. This is where I currently stand, looking into a small box at a small thing. No, something. No, I know exactly what this is, but my brain isn't allowing to fully realize it just yet. At first I want to say it's simply but a toy, left to die with all the other things on this block. But then I saw it breathing. In fact, it appears to be sleeping. My hands are sweaty, my breathing is erratic, and I'm blinking my eyes trying to refresh my vision. Each time, the image stays the same. Inside the box is a sleeping filly rainbow dash. I kneel down, trying to get a closer look into the box. I can't believe what I'm seeing. There's not a physical, mental, or extraterrestrial way how this could be here. How could she be here, in my gloomy, dark, and horrid world? I examine the box further, and on the inside, in simple pen, it says, "Give to good home." The first thought that runs through my mind, besides the initial "Filly Rainbow Dash in a box," is, who would give up a Filly Rainbow Dash? My mind is now a mess of questions. How did she get here? Why is she here? Why is she a filly? Her flank is even barren of her cutie mark, meaning she is indeed still a filly. As I stand to stretch my tired legs, I accidentally bump the side of the box with my foot, and the inevitable occurs. She wakes up. She looks around, rubbing her face with her foreleg, trying to wake herself up. At first all she sees is the brown walls of the box, but then she looks up at me. Those large black eyes, along with the rose-colored rim around them, they drive my heart to, as the meme goes, explode twice. The sheer cuteness of it all drives me to kneel back down, and I can't help but smile. I haven't smiled like this in years, since the last time me and my parents went out to the only remaining park in the area. Her eyes continue to stare at me, and I stare back. I don't know what to say, or what to do, but I must start somewhere. "Hi there," I speak, but she doesn't respond. What are you doing out here?" She looks around and then back to me. The more I study her, the more I realize she's really young. Years younger than her filly appearance in episode 23. She might not be able to talk yet. That is, if she can even talk in my world. The fact that she's even existing right now has me reeling in confusion. I return my attention back to her and notice a small shiver of her body. The fall season is here and can get pretty chilly, especially around mid-September. I'm not sure how to exactly tackle this situation. Do I take her home? Do I call someone? Who would I even call? I'm a closet brony, so none of my friends know about my love for the show. I can't take her to a shelter. That's just a stupid thought in the first place. Not only would it be a horrible sight, she might be taken off to some lab and experimented on, or just something really just as horrible. I really only have just one choice. She shakes once more as the cool air reaches her coat. Her wings ruffle as she lays back down and huddles her legs closer to keep her body warm. That's the final straw. I can't take it anymore. I take my own jacket off and reach down to pick her up. I get the initial response I expected. Fear. She begins to squirm around, unsure of what I'm doing to her. She can't fly yet, but she still flutters her wings as in praying for a miracle to happen that she magically takes flight. I set her into my jacket, wrap her up so that her head is sticking out, and hold her in my arm. She continues to squirm, but then my body heat begins to finally seep through this thin jacket and settles down. It's alright. Let's get you somewhere warmer, huh? I smile down at her. She looks up at me with so much confusion in her eyes as she tries to process what is happening. Don't worry. I'm not gonna hurt you. It's getting late and you'll freeze out here. I think she understands me, for after I say those words, her eyes return to their normal size, and she snuggles herself more comfortably in my jacket. She squirms a little, trying to get into a more comfortable position. I can feel her hooves and wings poking at me as she shifts. Then, to top it off, she rests her chin onto my arm and lets out a deep sigh, closing her eyes to drift off to sleep. My heart explodes for a third time. The entire walk back, I keep an eye out for people who might pass me by. I don't want anyone else to see her. I have no way of knowing how they would react. As usual, though, I don't see a single person. It's midnight by the time I get home. Fortunately for us both, I had turned on my porch light, otherwise I might have passed it. Being one of those few occupied homes on the block meant a lot of darkness. The city even stopped running power to the streetlights, so that made it all the more difficult. I glanced down at the filly, who continued to sleep in the jacket as I carried her. She was no longer shivering and felt quite warm. I walked up to my porch, careful not to make too much noise as I get my keys out, unlocked the two deadbolts, the master lock, and finally the doorknob, and opened my door. It's dark inside due to me leaving while it was still light out. With a flick of a switch, the single light bulb in the hallway comes to life, shedding some light into the living room. Most of the furnishings are my parents'. Then again, so is the house. I became the owner of it after their passing, and I've done what I can to keep it that way. Still with the filly Little Dashie in my arm, I walk into the living room. As I pass my family portrait, I greet it with a, "Hello, Mom. Hello, Dad." I know they aren't there, but knowing that they love me and that I love them helped me stay sane and to keep my miserable life going. As I enter the living room, I can feel a stirring in my arm. She had woken up, and most likely when I turned the light on, and she's now getting antsy. With no idea what to do or how to tackle the situation, I just set her down on the couch. Immediately, she jumps out of the jacket and looks around, already investigating her surroundings. I continue to watch her as she explores the couch and continues on to the coffee table. "What are you doing here in my world?" I didn't mean to ask it out loud, but it just sort of happens every now and then. Only seeing my friends once in a great while, I find myself talking to, well, myself a lot. I don't own a pet because that just means more money to dish out, and I'm already struggling as it is. From my question, the only response I get is another blank look on her face. That tells me enough that she has no clue either. Then again, what else would I expect from a filly that can't even talk yet? Are you lost? The moment those words left my mouth, her ears fall, and she looks to the ground. Oh. The realization that she has no clue as to what's going on, where she is, who I am, or anything else. She's beyond the word lost. She's misplaced. Well, until something happens, I guess you can stay with me. I see how she lifts her head up, ears starting to erect once again, and she looks at me with worry. My words don't sound that encouraging, so I throw on a smile as I speak. Don't worry. I'm sure whatever brought you here will fix itself with time. We just gotta wait. Is that alright? I'm not sure why I asked that, but it seems to do the trick. Her ears perk right up and she smiles. The next few hours are spent giving her the grand tour of my house. Nothing amazing to see, and I avoid taking her into my bedroom out of fear that the large amount of dirty clothes would swallow her up. Afterwards, I give her something to eat. I break up some small carrots, and amazingly, I discover that she has some teeth. Since she's still a filly, I wasn't sure if she would eat solid foods or just such as carrots yet. And again, she is from a cartoon, so I wouldn't know what is correct for her anyway. Satisfied with the food, she finds a comfy spot in my father's recliner and sits. I don't mind. It's not like I sit in it. I was never allowed to when he was still alive, so why would that change even after his passing? It's his chair. But I'm not going to be mean to a filly for not knowing that, so I let her sit where she's most comfortable. I also give her a small blanket to wrap herself up in, due to my house current temperature. It's not as cold as it is outside, but my furnace has had problems since before my parents' passing. There was a trick to fixing it, but that died along with my father. I must have fallen asleep at some point. I honestly expected myself to be wide awake due to such an interesting event. But after the long hours at work and staying up to take care of Dash, my body had other plans. I'm not sure how long I was out before I woke, but that doesn't matter. As I close my eyes, I feel something against my side. I look, and sleeping beside me is the small cyan filly, her rainbow mane and tail still, her head resting on the inside of my elbow. I know the meme gets old, but I must say it. My heart exploded again. Laying there, sleeping and curled up beside me had me smiling ear to ear. Her gentle breaths were barely heard. The hair on her mane tickled my arm, but I hold back any movement to itch. The warmth of her body against my stomach warms my already weak heart. Though a few months isn't a long time, it's how long I have wanted a moment like this. I own a little pony, a Rainbow Dash plushie to sleep with and hold tight. And now I have a real Rainbow Dash, a filly, sleeping at my side, content as though she's known me since birth. Right now, there's nothing else that matters to me. My despair, my sore feet, and my painful heart all go unnoticed, as nothing else can even remotely come close to the feeling I have right now. This joy I'm experiencing at this moment, as I lay awake on my couch. She's here, she's real, and right now, she's my little pony. She is my Little Dashie. It has only been 4 months since I brought the young Rainbow Dash into my home. I've done what little research I could on the matter, but I have not come to no conclusions. I've no idea why she's here, and quite frankly, I don't even care anymore. These few months with her have been the most amazing of my life. She's opened up my heart to love and joy, among other things. Right now, she sits right next to me on the couch as I watch television. She seems to enjoy the morning cartoons on the local stations, and I myself have come to enjoy them as well. She acts much like a young child would, and again, why wouldn't she? Another amazing feat is that she's been trying to learn to talk. I'm not much of a teacher, or much of a parent for that matter, but I'm doing my best to help her learn to speak and read. I don't know how or even where to begin to attempt to teach her how to write. From the show they did it with her mouth, but I will let that go for now. When she's a little older, if I even have her that long, I will do what I can to teach her. It used to be that a year would go slowly. I would look forward to the new year in the hopes of getting a fresh start. Now though, I feel as though this year went by a little too quickly for me. I've decided, since I have no knowledge of her actual birth date, to make the date I found her birthday. September the 17th. Oddly enough, that's the very same date the second season of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic aired last year. I quit watching the show after Dashie came into my life. There was no reason for me to continue, and honestly, I don't have much time to myself anymore. It would be hard to hide me watching the show, and even harder to explain the situation to her if she ever were to see it, especially at her current age. She knew her name was Rainbow Dash, but I've come to call her by Pinkie Pie's pet name of Dashie, and she has no problem with it. She can fully communicate with me now, and as well as read in English, and she's been starting to learn how to write with, you guessed it, her mouth. I tried to invent some devices for her hoof so she could write, but it seems writing with her mouth is more natural than moving her hoof around. One thing now that troubles me with her, every day she sits at the window looking outside. I'm not worried about her seeing passersby. I'm on a dead-end street, so that's the least of my worries. Still, though she doesn't say anything to me yet, I can see her hunger for fresh air in her eyes. I can't keep her inside her entire life. I keep talking as if she's going to be here forever. That's not true. One day, someday, she will return home. Whether it be a simple poof and she's gone, or through some magical spell and Twilight shows up here and takes her home to fix everything. In my heart, I hope that never happens. In my head, I know it will. It'll be just a matter of when. I do hope to get her outside soon. I've been checking out some of the abandoned lots and former parks on my walks to and from work, seeing where the best location would be to take her. Oddly enough, it seems to be the park I had played in growing up was the best option. That it shall be then. I shall take her to the park. How will I get there? She's still relatively small, so she can be hidden inside a jacket or something. Tomorrow is supposed to be a nice day anyway. She did it. After 2 years of my care and having absolutely no knowledge of flying myself, I helped her learn to fly. She's gotten quite big in a couple of years, and it was hard getting her to hide. It was hard getting to hide her when we walked to the park. I got so desperate to keep her hidden, I bought a dog costume for her to put on, so she could walk there unnoticed. She was not happy. So I got some books from the library and read up on teaching birds to fly. I would have looked on the internet, but I fear she would become curious of it herself. There are a lot of horrors on the internet, and she's not ready for it. In hindsight, it's bad enough that she's experiencing television, but she has come to enjoy SpongeBob and NASCAR far too much for me to take that away from her. Back to flying. I've been taking her to that old park for weeks in hopes that I could help her learn to fly. There's a large tree there with branches sticking out over a sandbox. Perfect spot for her to practice. If she falls and I can't catch her, at least she'll have something remotely soft to land on. And she fell a lot. I knew she would fall a lot. There were many scrapes, cuts and bruises towards her goal, but finally, after many weeks of work, she flew. It was only a short distance, about 50 feet, but she still did it. She's a little scrapped up, but she's beaming with pride. Maybe now she could fly overhead, so the people on the ground wouldn't notice her. I'll have to see if she can manipulate clouds like she could in the show. That would make it easier to take her places. She can just hide on a cloud as we go to the park. Another thing that has been brought to my attention, she asked me about having her own room. I got to thinking and realized the house does have a spare bedroom, though my parents had it filled with my old school stuff from my younger years, as well as several of my old toys. She might enjoy them, although she is getting older. I'm not sure how entertaining they would be for her. If she has her own room, I can get her own things so that she can feel somewhat more normal. She's pretty smart for a filly, and she knows about the difference between our species, but she still knows nothing about her origin. She's not ready yet. The only thing I can do is keep her happy. I only wish I had a way to buy her the things she really wants. If you told me 4 years ago I'd be taking care of a cartoon rainbow-colored pony, I'd have called you insane. I probably am in reality, but I don't even care. I'm happy and she's happy, and today's the day of the celebration. For today, my little Dashie got her cutie mark. I honestly don't know how to tackle that fact. She didn't even know what it was until I explained it to her. Now she's more ecstatic than before. It was a normal park outing, but this time she decided to see. She wanted to see how high she could get. I had limited how high she could fly, but honestly, I can't do anything about what she does up there. I can't fly, so the most I could do is tell her to be careful. Somehow I actually got it in her mind just to see how fast she could fly, probably due to her being a NASCAR fan and, well, a general racing fan. For some time she was trying to make up her own tricks and stunts of her own, giving them names. I just sit on a bench I fixed up and cheered her on. No one was ever around anymore. In fact, on that block, I think the last person left over a year ago. There are rumors that the entire area is going to be bought up by some company. However, all this turned into a large manufacturing area. I don't know how to feel about that, but it's not important right now. Right now, I'm so overcome with joy that my Dashie knows her place. Granted, this isn't her world, but she's still the Rainbow Dash from the show. Regardless of how I raised her, she still has that same spunk and attitude from the show, and now she even has her cutie mark. Anyway, she climbed quite a height in an attempt to gain speed from the fall. Well, all the right things factored for her. How she positioned herself, her mental focus, and probably me on the ground watching and cheering her on. And then she did it. She broke the sound barrier, creating a sonic rainbow overhead. Now, I didn't even imagine it was possible to accomplish such a feat in my world. I knew you could break the sound barrier, but actually do the rainbow part too? My mind is blown. So, the initial explosion brought upon many broken windows and sent off car alarms in the next county. I quickly rounded her up and we rushed home before anyone could arrive at the park. I was lucky none of my windows were broken. The rest of the day we spent celebrating. It just happened today was her 4th birthday. I've got no idea of knowing how old she actually was when I got her, so I just started over. We would have bought a cake, but due to the boom and all the businesses were closed, I needed new windows. So we made a cake on our own. Apparently, the fanfiction writers got it right. She can't bake at all. Granted, I'm not the best myself, but it was still a mess. We had fun though. She enjoys herself and she's happy, and therefore I'm happy. Though that was the highlight of the day, mine was just moments ago. She has now come accustomed to sleeping in her own room versus with me on the couch. I actually stopped sleeping in my room and kept her company in the living room up until recently. Now I can sleep on my own bed once more, but I keep my door unlocked, so if she needs me, she can get to me. I had just tucked her into bed and told her good night when she said it. "Good night, Daddy. I love you." I haven't been on the internet in, 3 years now? I don't know how the My Little Pony thing is doing online, or what the memes are still alive or not, but damn it all, I'm gonna say it because it's true. My heart exploded twice. For the first time, not only did she call me Daddy, which she has done on occasion, but she even said, "I love you." For a moment, I didn't know what to say or what to do. I've never been in this sort of situation before, but I remembered what my mother and father used to do, so I leaned over down and kissed her on the forehead and told her the same thing. Good night, my little Dashie. I love you too." She smiled at me, then closed her eyes to sleep. I walked out and turned off her light, making sure her SpongeBob nightlight was on, of course, and closed the door, then sat back down on the couch. I haven't moved for an hour now. I'm so lost in thought. The few times she had called me Daddy, I didn't think anything of it. I could picture why she would call me that, but being with her so much made me accept it as part of taking care of her. Tonight, when she said those 3 words, the realization finally sunk into my heart. I am her daddy. She considers me her daddy, and quite frankly, I consider her my daughter. Even though we are totally different species, I still love her with all my heart. And it has taken her to speak those 3 words for me to realize that. I think I've done it. I've broken my hard shell that has formed when my parents have died. I've let a little sweet filly into my life. I gave her a home to live in, food to eat, and now a daddy to love. She has given me hope, love, compassion, and now something I would never dared to utter. A daughter. I still speculate when the time is going to arise that she goes back to Equestria, and each day it gets harder for me to imagine when it actually happens. I just hope that she will never forget me, because I certainly won't ever forget her. I believe Dashie is now at her full size, rounding it in about 3 feet tall. She's fully grown. Though she's still only 10 years old, according to my math, I believe she's actually more along the lines of 14 or 15 years in actual years. So we celebrated 5 missed birthdays and an official moving day. That's right, moving day. We moved from my parents' house thanks to me finally saving up enough money, plus getting lucky at a casino. We bought a nice house 100 miles away from the city. It's got a lot of open land, and there's another house within 5 miles. It's just her and me. Now she can fly around all she wants, whenever she wants. She's truly happy, and though she does miss the old park, it's gone now along anything else left in the area. A large business bought up all the land, flattened it, and built a large factory there. It's an amazing boom to the economy, and people are starting to build homes again. But I'm glad, but it just wasn't for us. That amount of people would just hinder her going outside, and I'm not going to force her inside all day unless it's raining out. I've gotten a new job too, one that pays much more than my old one. Dashie even got around to talking about her getting her own job, but then she remembered what I told her. She took the look on her face was heartbreaking. We were enjoying a cake we made, which I must add we've improved upon that skill when she brought it up. I jokingly said she can't due to her being a pony, and I laughed. She remained silent. My God, I'm horrible. I just laughed because my daughter is different. I apologized for hours, and even though she says she understands, I know she's still hurt. Luckily, I have a way to fix this. Due to the sheer size of the property, it involves a lot of cutting of grass. Tomorrow, I will modify a lawnmower for her to use so she can have a job. I'll even pay her so she can buy her own stuff if she wants to. Though, I'd have to get it for her. She can still actually say she worked for something. According to the show, she was a weather pony. I don't have to mess with her Mother Nature unless it's a dire emergency, so there isn't really any job to be had there. I can't believe I've had her for 10 years now. My God, time goes by so fast. I wish it would slow down so that I could have more time with her. I don't know when, but I've got the sudden feeling our time together is running out. All of this has been far too good to be true. Today must have been the worst time of my life, even more so than when my parents died. Due to events I could not prepare for, Dash finally found out the truth before I could tell her myself. She knows what she is, a made-up cartoon from a television show. She's mad, no, upset beyond all thought. She's locked herself in a room, but I know my daughter. She didn't stay in there for very long. She opened her window and flew off, probably into a tree to sulk in her sorrow. I'm a monster. I should have told her sooner. I just wasn't sure when would be the right time. Now, we're both suffering for my carelessness. I thought getting cable would be a good thing, to give her more shows to watch, but what I didn't realize is that we got the hub station. I wasn't even aware that it was still up, and to my surprise I find that the show My Little Pony is still airing. It had stopped at 8 seasons, but it's still repeated. I remember walking in from work with some groceries. I set them into the kitchen and walked into the living room. That's when I saw it. Yay, she did it! Fluttershy had screamed, jumping with joy as Applejack, Twilight, and Pinkie Pie all sat on the clouds with dumbfounded looks on their faces. My heart sank. I knew this episode. I remembered this episode. Even after seeing nothing for 12 years, I still remember that damned episode. In that episode, Rainbow Dash performs the Sonic Rainbow, much like how My Little Dashie had years ago. At the time, I was still holding my keys, and I dropped them. They clanged on the wood floor. If she didn't know I was home before, she knew now. How long? Dash asked me, no emotion in her voice. How long have you known about this? Dashie turned to look at me. She had been crying. Her mane was even in a worse shape than normal. How long have you known about this? I couldn't help it. A tear ran down my cheek as she yelled at me. This was the very first time in all these years she had raised her voice against me, and I deserved every bit of it. So I sat down, turned off the television set, and I told her everything. I told her about the show, about finding her, and answered any and all questions she had for me. There were a lot. Most of them had stemmed from the show, to which I simply told her what I truly believed. That though she is a Rainbow Dash from the show, that she herself is a different pony from the cartoon. I tried to explain it to her, but her bull-headedness took over as she continued to lash out at me. I took it all. I deserved it all. I've been keeping that horrible secret from her for far too long. She's now a fully grown mare, capable of thinking for herself if she were in Equestria. Here, I still treated her like she was still my little filly. It's been wrong of me, but I couldn't help it. I didn't want this to ever happen, but I knew it would. I should have done what was right, but I didn't. It was only a matter of time before she found out, and she knew she was different. After our argument, she flew upstairs into her bedroom and slammed her door shut. I checked on her an hour later, and no response had told me that she had flown off. I can only hope for that she comes back, or at least, if she doesn't, she stays away from any other people. If anything, I hope some sort of special portal opens up and she goes back to her world and never thinks of me again. All I can say to her at this point is, sorry. I'm so sorry. It's been 3 days since Dashie left. The night of her departure, I did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I went for a walk. I wasn't sure where I was going or how long I walked, but that's what I did. I walked. Now, 3 days later, I'm finding myself out here walking once again. It's been roughly 3 hours, and though it's only 5 in the afternoon, it's grown dark. A storm is brewing, and soon I will be getting hit by the brunt of it. I turn around to begin my walk home, though I don't rush. My energy these past few days has been non-existent, as I've barely eaten anything more than a simple piece of toast. I feel so lost as I walk through the woods that surrounded my home. No, our home. It's as much as hers as it is mine, and nothing will change that. The rain has begun, but I do not quicken my pace. I just walk, much like I had done so long ago. The distant memories of all my pain and sorrow before Dashie began to seep back into my mind. I haven't had these thoughts in years. The pats of water on the tree leaves help me get distracted, but it's a peaceful sound, one you would never hear in the city. The rain is starting to pick up as my shirt is now soaking wet. I'm sure I'll be sick tomorrow, but I don't even care. I've been sick for 3 days now, a mental illness that has been tearing me apart. My daughter is somewhere out here, hurting, needing some comfort and warmth in this rain. I wish I could be there for her, even though she may not want me to. She may not ever want to see me again from how she acted. I don't blame her. It must have been such a horrible thing to find out that your past is like that. I can't even imagine what it would be like. I know Dashie is a strong mare and that she can pull through, but I also know that she holds a grudge at times. I'm not even sure that, even if she came back, if she would ever forgive me. Or, more importantly, if I could even forgive myself. It's been pouring out here. The tree canopies are barely holding back the torrential rain as I'm hammered by the water droplets. I stop to look around and find my bearings to return home. I'm not lost. Most of this area is easy to traverse once you get used to it. It's just, I'm also looking for Dashie as I walk. It's the only reason why I'm walking in the forest in the first place. I press on, keeping on a steady pace through this rain. Suddenly, I spy a large, thick tree. Its stature sticks out amongst the rest, and from looking at the barely wet grass underneath it, I can tell its many branches are holding back even this hard rain. I need to take a break, so I walk under the tree and sit down. The grass is barely wet, with only a few small droplets making their way down. This is the kind of tree I'd imagine Dashie would hide under in this rain. I wish it would be true, but I saw no sign of her as I approached. I closed my eyes and lean against the tree hulk as I think about my life. Our life. Together as a father and daughter. We've grown so much as a family, and we've been fortunate enough to have very few fights. None of them were as heartbreaking as the one 3 days ago. I feel a tear running down my cheeks as I imagine Dashie's face again. Her anger in her eyes, mixed with the confusion, it just tears me apart. I want so badly to make things right, or to go back in time and stop it from happening, but I can't do either of those. What's done is done. I'm so sorry. I speak out loud, not caring if anyone is listening. I'm alone in these woods, besides the wildlife. In this rain, they are hiding as well. The ones that aren't are far from being such as I. I'm just so sorry, Dashie. I continue to cry as I keep my eyes closed, leaning against the tree. The rain continues to pour down around me. An occasional drop hits my head, but I don't care. Crack. I open my eyes from the sudden sound and look to my left. I'm shocked at what I see before me, looking at me with teary eyes herself. Dashie. My little Dashie, covered in burrs and tree sap along her mane and tail, is standing a couple of feet away from me. She's wet with both rain and tears. I hadn't heard her approach, then again, being a Pegasus, she was very quiet and light on her hooves. She doesn't speak and instead walks over to me, not caring what noises she makes under her hooves. I don't move. I just sit on the ground and watch her with my own wet eyes. She looked so horrible, yet so beautiful at the same time. Her coat would need a good cleaning, but that was the least of my worries. Without a word, she sits down next to me, not making eye contact as she looks off into the woods. I can only look at her, wishing to hug her tightly and never ever let her go again. But I hold back, knowing that it would be all too sudden. Finally, she's the first to speak. I heard you. Her voice then got quiet as she whispers. And I'm sorry too. I simply smiled through my tears. Her stubborn attitude was still showing, as she's always had difficulties apologizing. Dashie, you've got nothing to be sorry about. It's all my fault. It's as simple as that. It seems my point doesn't get across, as she finally looks at me with a sorrowful face. Dad, do you still love me? Now's the time to act. I reach over and grab her, holding her in a tight hug. Of course, Dashie. I've always loved you. I still love you no matter what. Not even a small fight such as ours could ever change that. She returns the hug as we sit there and cry together. We continue to apologize, me for the truth and her for raising her voice and storming out. After some time, the rain subdues while we remain under the tree. Dad? Yeah? Can we go home now? I need a shower. Bad. I let out a chuckle, and she too laughs as I stand. We make our trip home, and she's smiling again. I am too. I've been giving it some thought, and I think I'll give her birthday present a little early. A ticket to the Indy 500. Yes, I'm taking her to the Indy 500. She can simply sit on some clouds and watch while I'm standing in the stands. I didn't even have to get her a ticket, but she still needs some sort of reminder of her visit. I'm sure she will have a blast, and though I didn't expect this to make everything right, I can only hope it cheers her up some more. With time, I'm sure she will relax and settle down about her being a cartoon. She's still a smart mare, and she knows she's real, not that made-up pony from the cartoon. I can only help her, push her to believe that, and hope she does the same to me. There's a point in every parent's life when they have to let their child go. Whether it be for the better or for the worst, it must happen at some point. Now I sit here in my living room by myself, sulking over the photographs of my distant memories of me and Dashie. On her 20th birthday, I had planned a special outing to see a flight show. As we prepared to leave, there was a knocking at the door. Never in the years we have lived here had anyone ever knocked at the door. Hell, we didn't even make arrangement if someone did show up. I simply told her to go to her room while I took care of it. Once I heard her door shut, I calmly and collectively asked who it was knocking, expecting some stranger possibly lost on his or her travels. A female voice spoke in such an elegant yet attention-grabbing tone I felt myself listening to her with the uttermost attention. She asked if she may come in, a question I'd normally refuse within a heartbeat, and yet somehow her voice was reminiscent. I couldn't help but walk over and open the door. When I first saw the figure standing on my porch, I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or hallucinating. Standing there was the radiant and majestic Princess Celestia. I was at a loss for words, fighting both the emotions of being a brony excitement which I had only held when I first found Dashie, and emotions of sorrow before I knew what this meant. She stood there for another second looking at me. We matched each other in eye level, her body being the size of a nearly full-grown horse. I stepped back and allowed her to enter. What caught me off guard next was the 5 other ponies that followed suit. First Twilight Sparkle and the rest of the gang. Applejack, Rarity, Fluttershy, and lastly Pinkie Pie bounced in. Ooh, so this is what an alien house looks like on the inside. Oh my god, you've got a kitchen! Are you starving? Are you starving? I can make us some... She was stopped by Applejack's hoof.
Oh, easy there, Sugar Cube. We're just here for Rainbow, so we ain't got no time for any eating.
Applejack's stomach growled.
No matter how hungry we are.
I still wasn't sure how to completely react to all of this, but not wanting to be rude, I offered some leftovers. We've got some leftovers from dinner last night. You're more than welcome to have some. Pinkie Pie took that as an okay and ran into the kitchen with much vigor. It seemed I did not even need to tell her where anything was. She instantly knew where everything was placed. Factor it to either being dumb luck or simply being Pinkie Pie. I chose the latter.
I'll go keep an eye on her,
Applejack said, walking to join the hyper pony. As she passed, she tipped her hat to me. I was finding it odd that the ponies were not more hesitant around a creature such as me. Then again, the same could be said about me, but having Dashie for 15 years, I grew used to having such a thing around me. Now, I've got 5 other ponies and a full-sized goddess horse looking at me with the same amount of curiosity I had held for them. There was a moment of silence as I watched the 2 mares enter my kitchen and began to rummage through my fridge.
I'm quite surprised.
Celestia began.
I expected a little more resistance to us entering.
Why? I know who you all are. Celestia nodded.
Ah, so you do know then.
That you're all fictional characters from a children's TV show? Then yes. Otherwise, why you're all here, I've got no clue. That last part, I lied, hoping to keep my mind at ease. I knew the reason, but I wanted to ignore it.
Oh, I think you do know.
My heart fell into the pits of my stomach. I did know, and she was straight to the point about it. During all these years I had anticipated this moment, but as time dragged on, that thought slowly dispelled until there was nothing more than a minor nip in my mind. That's when it always happens, you know. When everything is finally perfect, and you don't have to worry anymore.
Excuse me, sir?
Twilight began.
But from what we could figure out, Rainbow Dash should be here. Is she?
I looked to the purple mare. I wanted to tell her no, but I knew it was fruitless. She is upstairs in her room.
In her room?
Rarity asked, surprised. Yes, Dashie is in her room. I wasn't sure who was knocking, and I didn't want her to be spotted.
Dashie? Oh my, you're that friendly with her already?
Rarity continued. I wanted to punch that pony so hard right then, how she responded and insulted me. Friendly? That's not even the beginning of it. And I should be asking you ponies what the hell you did. Celestia raised a brow, taken aback by my change of tone.
You see, my student...
I know who she is. Get to the chase. I was very short with her. As furious as I was, I wanted to know why they sent Dashie as a filly to some other world. Twilight bit her lip as her teacher continued.
Celestia.
Twilight bit her lip as her teacher continued.
That's Celestia's line.
Yes, of course. I was still working on a spell to help the weather team with some storm development. Well, they made slightly too large of a storm, and well, Twilight used her magic to try and dispel it in a shot at a lightning bolt meeting her magic. Rainbow Dash was unfortunate enough to be within reach of the blast, and it engulfed her and sent her to, well, here. So we are here to retrieve her. Simple enough, I'd imagine.
Before I could answer, Dashie called from her bedroom. Dad, is everything alright? That second, my heart stopped beating as I looked down from pony to pony. Every pony's faces was in pure shock and confusion. They recognized the voice of their Rainbow Dash, but she said Dad.
Excuse me, Sugar Cube.
Applejack started, returning from the kitchen.
Did I just hear Rainbow call you Dad?
Before I could answer, Celestia started up again.
Do you care to explain?
I was lost. So many things were running through my mind all at once. There was only one thing I could do, and I had to do it. But I knew I wouldn't like it. Go into the living room and make yourselves comfortable. I'll be right down with her. I didn't allow a response. I turned around and walked up the stairs slowly. Dad? Yeah, Dashie, I'm coming up. I looked back down to the group of ponies as they watched me ascend. We need to talk. So, that's what I did. I told her who was down there and that they were here to take her back. She had seen the cartoon every so often after some time and found the wacky adventures entertaining. She had given up any thought that the Rainbow Dash in the show was her, and she only viewed it as another cartoon. As I talked to her and explained that those very ponies she didn't believe in were downstairs, she brushed me off with some laughs. She didn't believe me, and thought I was playing some joke on her. So, I took her down into the living room. Dashie! Pinky shouted, jumping onto her cyan friend. Dashie was quick to shove the pink pony off. Hey! Get away from me! She was taken aback by the sudden amount of ponies filling our living room. They all looked to her with worried expression as to why she shoved her closest friend away. Pinkie Pie's cotton mane went straight down as she looked in confusion. You don't recognize me, do you? No, not you, or any of you, Dash continued. It hurt me in so many ways. I knew these were her friends, but so many things have happened differently that she didn't know the truth fully, and neither did they, so I had to explain to them. I started. Dashie, please take a seat so I can talk to them. She did just that in her recliner. The entire time she had looked at all the ponies occupying the couches and the center rug in front of the fireplace. It was time. But first, I had to start with a question. How long ago was she sent over here? The question caught them off guard, but Twilight cleared her throat as she spoke.
About 15 days ago. Why?
I was speechless. 15 days ago? Shit, she's been with me for 15 years. That means a day in their world meant a year over here. Well, I continued, it's been a lot more time than that over here.
How long?
Twilight asked. 15 years. All the ponies besides Celestia had their mouths agape.
That don't explain why she don't know us,
Applejack said. Well, that's the thing. When I found her, she was just a filly.
Come again?
From my math, I think she was no older than 4 or 5 years old. Now Celestia looked surprised.
You mean to tell us that you've been taking care of Rainbow Dash for 15 years? Since she was a small filly?
She asked. I simply nodded and looked over to Dashie, who wore an expressionless look on her face. Well, she is... I started, but I couldn't hold my tears back any longer. I know it's not true. God, I wish it was, but...
I understand. The dad now makes sense.
Celestia cut me off, holding a stern look about her face. She was trying to piece together in her mind what possibly could have happened. I chalked it up to the magic being unstable, possibly reverting her in age. For a few moments it was quiet, besides the breathing of 7 ponies and myself. Finally, it was Dashie who broke the silence. So? What's supposed to happen now? I looked up at the princess, trying to read her face. No matter how good I had gotten at reading Dashie's face, Princess Celestia had the best poker face I'd ever seen. I had no clue as to what she was thinking or feeling at this moment.
Well, it's quite simple. Twilight?
Celestia looked down to her pupil, who instantly perked up at hearing her name.
Do you still remember that memory spell from the Discord incident?
Twilight simply nodded as she stood up from the couch and hopped onto the floor. I knew what was going on, what Princess Celestia had in mind. She wanted Twilight to either erase her memories and start from anew, Or, possibly, I hoped she just simply wanted to give Dash her memories of her friendship and time in Ponyville. I wasn't sure as to what to do. I felt it was right. I knew it was right. And I knew it needed to be done. I had been telling myself that for 15 years as I waited for this very moment. But there was something I needed to say before it happened. If these ponies are going to take my Dashie away, I had some words to speak before that could happen. No, wait! Please! I started. Twilight stopped and looked to the sun goddess. Just give me a moment with her, please. All I ask, since this will be the last time we'll ever see each other. I had given up holding back my tears, and at this point I was openly crying. The ponies could tell I was hurting, and Dashie didn't look to be faring too well either. So, figuring it wasn't good to prolong the inevitable, I walked over to the chair Dashie sat in, knelt down to meet her on eye level as I spoke. Dashie, my little Dashie, I love you with all my heart. You've done wonders to open me up from the man I once was. You. I had to pause a moment to settle down. You have brought me so much joy in my life that I can't possibly ever thank you for it. At this point, Dashie had begun to cry as well. That only made it worse for me. These 15 years we've had together, talking and playing and flying, all of those have been so special to me. I want you to know that I will forever love you. It doesn't matter that we aren't biologically related or of different worlds. I don't care what you may think of me, or if you ever even remember me. But right now, you being my little Dashie, I want you. I poked her on the chest to physically show that I was talking to her. I want you to know that fact. If there's ever a problem that happens, and if you need me, don't hesitate to find a way to get to me, okay? I tried to laugh, passing the last part off as a joke. It worked only slightly as we both continued to cry. I also heard some sniffling from behind me. I could only picture Pinkie Pie crying as much as she had at the end of the second episode in season 1, after Luna and Celestia had been reunited. Do I have to go, Daddy? It had been 15 years. It had been a few years since she had actually called me Daddy. Most of the time it was simply Dad or Pops. It felt good knowing that she still cared for me enough to call me Daddy, much like the first time she had said it to me, so many years ago. I simply nodded my head as I stood up. Before I could grasp my balance, she jumped up onto me and hugged me tight. I could feel her tears running down the back of my neck, and I returned the embrace. It's your actual home, Dashie. You don't belong here. You need to go back to where you belong. I belong here with you! It hurt so much to say, but I had to keep her convinced that this was the right thing to do. No, you don't. You're limited here, only I'm able to fly around the house. You've got no friends or other ponies to relate to. I was only taking care of you until this time would come, but I never thought it would be this painful. We remained quiet for a few more minutes as we held each other closely. She didn't fight back or wanted to resist what was happening, which told me she knew it all too well that what had to be done. I love you, Daddy. And I love you too. My little Dashie. We separated as she lowered herself to the ground. At this point, all the other ponies had tears flowing, even the goddess herself. She had seemed quite smug about knowing exactly what had happened, the time difference and such, but it was evident that the age difference was a shock. She most likely had expected a 35-year-old Rainbow Dash, but instead found my 20-year-old Dashie. Twilight stepped closer to Rainbow Dash, sniffing once before her horn glowed. I knew what was coming. It hurt so much, but I knew it was right. It was what had to happen, for her friends, and, in a twisted way, for me. Now I could know that she was actually going home, and would be around her friends, and she could fly whenever and wherever she wanted to, without any limitations. She could enjoy her friends' company once more. Wait! I looked from the floor to Dashie as she backed away from Twilight. Before I go, I want to get something. Before any pony or myself could protest, she flew up to her room. She was quick and returned with a shoebox in front of her hooves. I wasn't sure if she would be allowed to take anything back with her, and have expected the princess to protest, but she remained quiet, allowing Dashie to quickly write down something on a piece of paper and set it on the coffee table. She looked back to me, still crying, but with a smile on her face. I knew she had realized this was how it must end, and I knew that as well. The box, from my guessing, was probably her most cherished item that she kept for if she had to leave. Though it hurt me to think about it, I hoped she had a picture of us. Then again, I also hoped not, for she would be forced to remember me in a world away, and that just hurt as much as everything else.
I'm so sorry, Rainbow Dash.
Twilight started.
I honestly wish there was another way to do this. I wish I didn't have to do this, but...
Can't? Dashie started. Can't he come with me? The stuttering in her voice told me that she was simply speaking her mind, not actually asking the question. Twilight shook her head, unable to keep eye contact with her friend as she cried before her.
Rainbow Dash.
Celestia started.
He cannot join you in our world, much like you cannot stay in his. This was all never meant to be, and the world around us was not made to house you, and yet...
Celestia looked at me, smiling, and began to look around our living room. All the photos of us together, all her knickknacks and belongings strewn around the room.
And yet, something beautiful happened here. Something I cannot explain in full. When I realized where you ended up, I expected the worst. I had figured you to be ruined, tainted and tarnished from the world's cruelty. But now, I see that it's quite the opposite. That here, this man that has raised you, shows me that you were in a good hooves, or hands as it were.
Dashie sniffed once before beginning to calm down as Celestia's words sunk in. Celestia then returned to looking smiling at me.
I cannot speak for you, but from what I see in front of me, the amount of love you both share and have shared together tells me that you have raised her as if she was your own. Even with the obvious differences, you still raised her unbased as to her species, her origins. You raised her as your daughter, which only makes this entire ordeal so much worse.
I absorbed her words, as well as the other ponies in the room.
So, I must say to you, dear sir, please do not hold my student accountable for this. It was never her nor any pony else's intention to cause this much hurt to either of you. If you must blame some pony, I would ask you to blame me. I am the one that helped bring them here to take Rainbow Dash back to her home, away from here and you.
I couldn't look at any of them, my heavy breathing breaking down with sobs. My mind was just going on its own, thinking back at all the things Dashie and I did together. I took a deep breath as I spoke. How could I blame some pony for sending Dashie here? I sniffled and then cleared my throat as I continued. I nearly choked up as I searched for the words to express myself. These have been the best 15 years of my life, so if anything, I feel quite the opposite. I wish to thank you, Twilight, and the rest of you. Thank you for what you did, though not intentional. Thank you for all that came out of this. And finally, thank you for all my years, my life, and my love with Dashie. I tried to smile at Twilight between the sobs, but she looked on the edge of tears herself, and could only look away before she cried herself. Celestia then stood up from the rug she laid on, and walked over to me as I stood.
No need for thanks, good sir. Instead, I wish to thank you for taking care of one of my little ponies. She would never have made it without someone much like yourself.
Celestia closed her eyes and then leaned her horn towards me. I didn't move. I wasn't sure as to what was going on as she still touched her horn. against my head. I felt a sudden rush of warmth through my body. She drew her horn away, still smiling as she stepped back.
Thank you.
Then another pony spoke up.
Thank you, sir.
Twilight added, finally being able to speak through her tears.
Thank you.
Applejack said.
Thank you, darling, for caring for our Rainbow Dash.
Rarity spoke.
Thank you.
Fluttershy said. Thanks! Pinkie Pie shouted as she sprung up to me and hugged me. I couldn't help but laugh a little at her extrinsic attitude. Better yet, the rumors on the internet were true. Her mane did smell like cotton candy. I remained silent as I nodded. Then I looked back to Dashie, who also wore a smile on her face. The ponies all turned to Dashie, as Twilight's horn began to glow once more.
Are you ready now, Rainbow?
Twilight asked again, returning to Dashie and starting her magic. She simply nodded as she closed her eyes and awaited the inevitable. It seemed time slowed down as Twilight's horn approached Dashie's forehead. My mind began forcing random memories of hers together. I can vividly remember the splashing of the bathtubs from her bath times before she showered herself. I can still taste her many failed attempts at baking and cooking in general. I can still smell the outdoors from our times at the park, where she was able to spread her wings. There were so many memories that I simply had to shut off my brain so that I could keep focused on my little Dashie. A single tear ran down her cheek, as I could see her eyes moving under her lids. Her mind was doing the exact same thing mine was, forcing our fondest memories all at once, for this would be our final time when we ever saw one another. Finally, Twilight's horn touched Dashie's forehead. There was a bright light, and when I could see again, they were all gone. All the ponies had disappeared. Through my eyes, I sighed in relief. It felt wrong, but it also felt right. She was now the normal Rainbow Dasher that had belonged in Ponyville. I stood in the living room for several more minutes, just staring blankly at the empty floor that Dashie had been standing on just moments before. Then, I looked around the room and took notice of my surroundings. I noticed a few things were different. Pictures that once held images of me and Dashie no longer hung from the walls. Many of the random personal items of her were scattered around the living room were gone as well. I was confused, so I ran up to her bedroom to take a look. When I opened the door, what I saw instead of her NASCAR and airshow posters mixed with her bed and other furnishings was a simple office. A cheap desk with a computer on it and an ugly potted-looking plant. It took me some time to digest what I was experiencing before I realized what must have happened. It made sense, but it still stung me in my chest. To make sure nothing had happened between worlds, Celestia must have removed any existence Dashie ever being here. Being with me. 15 years all down the drain as her existence was wiped from the planet. I felt as though all those years were for naught, wasted, as I wouldn't be able to remember her. And yet, my memories of her still lingered. I could remember everything as if it were still as vivid as when they happened. And then the thought clicked. She did something with her magic when she touched me with her horn. Did she protect my memory so that I would remember her? Had she done the same for Dashie? I walked back downstairs and into the living room while I thought. On the coffee table sat a book. I recognized it. It was my photo album. I sat down on the couch and opened it to the first page. There was my mother and father with me shortly after I was born. I continued to flip through them, looking at my own past. There was a gap after my parents died, but to keep my mother's dream going, I had picked it back up again, making false memories of happy times and enjoying my life to stick into her book of memories. Then I opened up to a piece of paper. I picked it up and immediately recognized the handwriting, or more correctly, the hoofwriting, the mouthwriting. I speculated this was what she had written down before she left. Dad, for 15 years you took care of me. For 15 years you loved me, played with me, and made sure I enjoyed my life in a world not meant to house me. I'm not a man of many words, but even though I told you this in person, I felt you needed a written version of it so you knew it was all too real. I love you, Daddy. You helped You helped shape me into the man I am now. I'm not sure what is going to happen, if I will be able to remember any of this or not, but I want you to know that you did a darn good job of raising me, even if I was a bit stubborn at times and short with you during others. With Celestia's permission, I hope to allow you to keep our photos, our memories with you, so that you'll never forget. Again, I love you, and thank you. Your little daughter always. Your Little Dashie forever. Rainbow Dash. I set the note back into the page, flattening it with my hand as I felt the dried tear marks littering the paper. I read the note over and over and over again until I had it fully memorized. Then I turned the page and I was greeted by Dashie's silly smile. So, now I sit here, looking through my photo album of our time together. Her first bath, her first words, her first drawing, even her first preened feather, all in this book of memories. Everything else in the house was gone, but what I had put in this photo album still remained. I don't even dare to change that either, but I will continue to add to it, to show that those years with her helped not only shape myself, but helped shape her as well. I am a new man from what I was 15 years ago, changed, given another chance by a sheer miracle of fortunate events that transpired from somewhere I can't even speculate. If I had never gone back and checked that box, if I had done something different than I had, could have changed everything between us. I guess I'm lucky that it all worked out. I can gladly say that I have achieved my parents' only wish, and that's for me to be happy. Though I am saddened, I'm still happy for the time I had with her. I now sit alone in this empty house, staring at my mother's rainbow picture with a smile plastered to my face. Every time I see it, I think of Dashie. I should be crying. I should be feeling horrible and wanting nothing more but my daughter back. And yet, I feel relieved to know that everything is alright. She didn't run away or leave on bad terms. She's gone, home, to where she belongs. And she's safe. I look back down to my photo album, turning to the page after our most recent photo. The pages are still blank, and I still have a lot of life ahead of me, and I plan to make the most of it. For myself, and for my little Dashie. The end.